Jacking off from the hijack, I open raise, and the button cold calls, and the big blind comes along. So we go three ways to a pretty spicy flop. If the ace were a heart and I had the backdoor nut flush draw, I think I might bet this here. However, I decided to go for a check call line, planning to call any reasonable bet size. This bet size looks pretty unreasonable to me, so I just go ahead and check fold. Against like half pot or less, I certainly would have taken one off. I have 5-4 suited in the hijack, and the low jack open raises to 2 1/4 blinds. So this is just a pre-flop spot I want to remind myself of, because I believe I folded this hand fairly quickly, which is not terrible. Folding is okay. At this stack depth with 100 blinds effective, I think we can mix this, right? We can 3-bet some, we can fold some. I'm not really going to have a flatting range here in the hijack against the low jack opener, but if we were deeper, if we are like 200 blinds deep, then I think I should be 3-betting this almost all the time. And if we're really short, then I should be folding it all the time. So if I were as deep as Syracuse ball here, I think 3-betting would be a very good play. As it is, I can mix 50-50 with the lower card on the left. I'm going to fold it. With a higher card on the left, I would have 3-bet. Except I wouldn't have, because I didn't know all this before I looked it up in this session review. Ace king in the big blind. Let's play a big pot. It folds around to the button who raises. I'm of course going to 3-bet. I'm 3-betting 100% of my ace king, suited and offsuit here. My opponent calls and we catch a pretty nice flop. I'm going to lead this. I think half pot is good. Smaller might be fine as well. And they go ahead and raise straight off. So I can see some merits for calling here. It's a relatively dry board aside from the flush draw. They can't have top pair with me along with a flush draw. So if I'm trying to get value, I'm trying to get it from like king queen. Some flush draws like 6x of clubs have pretty good equity here. I think we're close to a flip, whereas like a gut shot flush draw also is doing quite well. Then I think I'd be a little bit more ahead. But regardless, I decided this player's kind of loose passive. I got the fish bones on him. And even though I could call and then check call, maybe a turn shove, I decided to go ahead and just put it in. And thinking that my opponent's going to call it off quite often, which, you know, they don't. So I don't know. I'm not sure what the solver says. There's probably been some solver up down here, PO, kind of fact checking me. So I guess you know something I don't know now. But then by the time you know it, I will have seen it in editing the video. So yeah. And so I win the pot. You know, I'll take it. Another fairly innocuous hand. I have 9-4 suited in the big blind. 49ers, if I was still in the Bay Area, maybe I'd play this hand. I ended up folding it. Against a 2 1/4 X with a low rake structure, I should be defending this hand. I kind of want to make this note for my future self, because I probably watch my videos more than other people do. But against this raise size with a high rake, I think the fold is fine. Ace queen offsuit in the small blind. Maybe we're going to play this hand. There's a raise and a 3-bet to us though, and I think some people get themselves in trouble here. I think this is just a very easy fold. We want to be playing a very tight range here and just like 3-balling it, 4-balling it even. It's already been 3-balled. And when a passive player is 3-betting, I'm liable to, I generally think they've got a stronger range than an aggressive player, right? It kind of makes sense. They're limping a bunch of hands. They're cold calling a bunch of hands. What are they raising with? It's probably pretty good. Pocket queens on the button. It's going to fold to me, and I raise, and I get called by the big blind. And flop, interesting, right? Gut shot, overpair, backdoor flush draw, and they lead out for half pot, which is also interesting. I'm not sure it's good with any hands to really lead this board. Yes, it hits their range, but it kind of smashes my button range. So I could think about raising here. I'm not sure how much it accomplishes. If they'd made a tiny bet, I'd be more inclined to raise. But this half pot, I think I can call and play very confidently on future streets as we see different runouts. Now the 9 comes, they bet half pot, and here I actually think I probably should have raised. Unless they have something like a boat and they're just like messing with me, this feels kind of like a jack to me. Maybe an 8 even, maybe a 10x, maybe some sort of draw that's trying to get a cheap showdown, a cheap river really. So I do just call because I don't have a good reason for that. I was basically thinking if I raise and get 3-bet, that's pretty gross. There's so many draws that I really hate folding, but on the other hand, I feel like I will almost always be beat, so probably raise folding is the play. I guess, but I don't have really strong reads or a lot of history with this player. So I just called. The river looks pretty disgusting, and I'm really not looking forward to calling a big bet for my opponent, who then checks. So I'm like, hey, cool, let's check it back. I could try and get value from here, like a jack or something, but I don't. I check it back, and they don't have a jack. They had an 8, which made a straight with their 10 in their hand. So they just played it so weird. I don't really know what to make of this hand. I don't hate my line, but I think raising the turn was a pretty good thing to give a little bit more thought to, particularly when, they bet half pot on the flop. That's a large flop bet size. They bet half pot on the turn. That's a small turn bet size. So maybe that's just the only button they know how to locate, but more likely on the flop, they felt better about their hand than on the turn. I don't know. What do you think? King Queen suited in the cutoff. It's a spicy one as there's a raise and a cold call. I think this hand is too good to just cold call, so I'm going to 3-bet, and it folds around, and both players call. So my bet sizing, I think it's fine, right? It's basically I hit pot and then I clicked it back one, so it's basically like 4x plus 50 cents. Seems okay. Flop comes 10-7-5, and they both check to me. I have backdoor hearts, I have backdoor Broadway, and I guess I can make a king high straight as well, and 2 overcards. So this feels like a hand that's got pretty good value, and I could bet something like 9 or 14, kind of threatening them with going like bang, bang, bang. Really though, this is kind of more like maybe a 2-street hand even? I don't know. Stack size a little interesting. If I did have a really big hand here, I probably would bet something like $9 and then go bigger. I would love to run this one in Munker, but I don't have the resources to really do a good sim on that, so I won't right now. I do decide to check back though, as I feel like I've got so many turn cards that I'm going to be really interested in seeing that I really hate bet folding here. But I do think this might be one of my better bluffing hands. I mean, yeah, I could have a hand like 8-9 suited, I guess, and that's a little better. But I can get on board with betting this. If I had Queen Jack, I might have been a little bit more likely to throw the bet out there. But the other thing about this board is it really smashes my opponent's range, right? Like pocket 10s, very likely to raise call. Maybe the player could have cold called and then called twice. The hijack here. Pocket 7s, pocket 5s, those feel very viable. And then they're going to have hands like 4s, 6s, 8s that are actually interesting hands to turn into bluffs, I think. So, and then a lot of like ace 10 suited down through jack 10 suited, 10-9 suited maybe. So I don't hate my check. I think 3 ways we want to be checking the sum, probably betting it some as well. And the turn's a queen. So I'm like, okay, cool. You check it to me. I'm going to bet this time for sure. You bet something like half pot or some kind of reasonable sizing. I'm going to call it. And they just bet pot, full pot, which is more than pot, but it's actually pot without the rake. So I fold. I don't know. Maybe it's bad. But like, what are there's a lot of draws. I'm not blocking them except for like king jack. But yeah, I just felt like a passive player bombs it here. I don't know. I'm not in love with my top pair. This one I feel a little unsure of though. And I'd love to run that Munker sim. So maybe there'll be a Patreon link in the bottom. I don't know. We'll see. I'd love to rent a server and like really run some nice 3-way sims because we don't see a lot of data on 3-ways, right? Everybody loves a good 3-way sim. Jack 8 suited in the cutoff, facing a large pot-sized open raise from the low jack. So I'm just going to fold this hand. It folds around to this big blind who makes the call. And looking at this bet size, the fact that it's a low jack, the fact that it is a player who has an open limping range, I think the big blind should be flatting some pretty strong hands here. So I think this hand is pretty interesting in the way it plays out. That's why I want to include this. It goes check, bet 3/4 pot, call, and then the turn is a 5. So in theory, pocket kings, pocket aces should only belong to the pre-flop raiser. Ace king, also you would usually think that. Pocket pairs, they can both have like pocket 9s, pocket 7s, king 9 suited maybe 9-7 suited. The big blind can have. The low jack probably doesn't have much of that. And it goes check again, and then pot size bet, right? A call. And then the river's just the brickiest brick to ever have bricks, so it goes check and jam, and it's about a pot size jam. So pretty well set up, pretty well structured bets, I think, from the person who made it pot size pre-flop. That's one of the things. Larger bet sizes pre-flop means it's easier to get the money in post-flop. Not saying that means you should do it, but just that there are some upsides to it. So they get snapped off. They had 7-6 of hearts for just a monster draw on the turn, right? For a hand that I'm like, okay, I didn't think you necessarily had that in your raising range, so that's good data. But also, this other person had ace-king that they flatted pre, which I don't want to draw some huge conclusions thinking, okay, this person likes to flat ace-king pre. This is a very specific situation, right? It's a player who has a limping range, it's a large raise size, and it's the low jack. So it's the tightest configuration you're going to get in 6-max. So I actually really like their play. With the ace-king, they end up winning the pot. And when I think back on my hands, my king-queen where I folded the turn and my ace-king where I jammed the flop, both of those, I believe, against this player, I like them less. If I had had this read, I'd probably play them differently. I didn't have this read yet. Now I do. So unless these people are watching my very small YouTube channel, then I maybe have some information that's going to be useful to me. Although, again, I don't want to assume that Syracuse ball is going to be flatting ace-king against my low jack open because I'm raising much smaller. I don't have a limping range. And yeah. This is the last hand we're going to go over from this table. I've got Jack 7 suited on the button. It folds to me and I raise and I get called by the big blind. The flop comes deuce trade deuce. And I think I want to c-bet this with 100% of range, probably for a small sizing. PO solver right down below is going to tell you whether that's a good idea or not. That's what I do, even without a backdoor. If I am checking any Jack 7, I imagine it's probably the one without the backdoor, but I'm not certain. And I get called, and then the turn's a 10, which I was thinking, yeah, maybe I'll barrel this card. It looks like it could have hit me. And then they bet, and it's like, yeah, I guess it looks like it could have hit them. Sure, they could be bluffing, and I could be folding the best hand. They could be bluffing, and I could be folding the worst hand. So, of course, I'm going to fold. Thanks for watching my pretty low-key session. Like it if you like it, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and I'll see you next time. Peace.